ba 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 ba. La 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 la. Hi. So there's been a lot of people who are doing like music raps, and I've listened to some songs, but why not do a book raps? Or actually, I just kind of want to share the books I've read this year. But for those of you who don't know, I am a physicist in graduate school at WashU. I just started this year. I am also a Catholic and very much focused on my faith in that way. And I've always loved fantasy and fiction books. This year, I started branching out into a more variety of types of books. And so I just like to share what I've learned with you and what I've read. There's been a lot of books. So as you can see here, I've read this year. Okay, so the first 2 months, I didn't start tracking until like February, March, and I tried to backtrack, so it might be a bit off. Sorry, there's a plane up there. Kind of sounds like a bomb falling. If I die, I'm dead. Anyway, so 34 books this year. Let's say plus or minus 2 to 3, because I don't fully know how to backtrack. And just under 14,000 pages. Sounds like a lot. So let's go through the stats of what that means. Okay, so 34 books means that on average, I've spent 10 days to read a book. So I've read a book every 10 days on average. Or you could say that's a little over zero point 0.6 books a week, or just under 3 books a month. Okay, now on the pages side of thing, just under 14,000 pages correlates to about 38 pages a day, 266 pages a week, or just under 1,200 pages a month. Now, pages, those seem arbitrary. So I looked some stuff up, and the average words per minute of someone just reading for fun is about 300. I'm probably a bit closer to 400. I did a quick test and it was like 340, but whatever. So if we say that I was reading on average 300 words per minute and a page is 500 words, then that means my minutes per page was about 1.6 minutes per page, which means I was reading on average just over an hour a day, just over 7 hours a week, and 371 hours I've spent reading this year. Now, that's a little off because all the books that I've spent reading aren't listed here. And there's stuff like that. But let's get into the books that I've read. So first, I have a large variety of genres. Typically, these are adventurous, mysterious, and dark. And that was at the beginning of the year. I read a lot of fantasy books that just really skews the numbers. But then you could see just different aspects of, informative. So this would be like things that I learn from. Challenging, I'm not sure what that means. We'll see what that is. Reflective, makes you think about yourself. Emotional, what is emotional? Probably me. Lighthearted. That's very lighthearted. And then just a couple of things. So it's a wide variety of moods. My pace. Actually, I don't know how this thing tracks pace. It's like how fast the book is. So I'm not going to look at that. Maybe that's how long I take to read it. But that's also skewed. Page number. I'm roughly split between what they consider long books. 500 pages is not long in my opinion. 1,000 pages, that can be long. I've read a number of those. But like I'm roughly split evenly because um, I typically prefer reading the longer books, but the shorter books go quicker, and so you end up reading more of those. So it's kind of skewed. For fiction, nonfiction, primarily fiction, but about a quarter is nonfiction, which makes sense for me because at the beginning of the year I read a lot of fiction books, and it's just easy for me to read fiction books. I really love it, and it really is easy for me to spend hours a day reading. Um, Here's my genre breakdown. As you can see, tons of fantasy. That's just because fantasy is the easiest genre for me to read. Science fiction's close there because I also love it. And then you can see the breakdown of science and religion are roughly equal in terms of number of books, and then just a bunch of different genres. Most of these are like one just because the book happened to be that thing that I had read. So yeah, format: print, digital, primarily print. I prefer print, but digital is sometimes the best way to read. And I actually have a new fancy Kindle thing that I will probably next year probably have more digital. Um, my most read authors. This is entirely skewed by fantasy because the nonfiction books I read, they don't tend to be too many books by the same author. Whereas I can read 5 Orson Scott Card books, no problem. and I've read a lot more than that, just not this year. Here's my breakdown for the year. The red is the number of pages, and the blue is the book's read. So as you can see right here, I was reading really long books. Over here, roughly equivalent. Over here, short books, it seems. May, that was a rough month. It was like the end of my undergraduate career. Finals were coming up. I was hanging out with people. But honestly, the reason why didn't read any books in May was because I was telling myself to read a specific book. This one, uh, it's a hard book to read because it's a philosophy book, and it was fairly dense, and it didn't really make me want to read it. And so I told myself, you got to read this. So I didn't read any other books during that time. Yeah, missed opportunities. Back. Anyway, so here are the books that I've read. As you notice, this first one says finished February. There's probably a couple books that I read in January. Um, I don't remember what they were, so we'll never know. I mean, I know I read them. I just don't remember that I read them in January. Anyway, so first, Brother Astronomer, Adventures. Oh shoot! I need to grab that. Where'd you go? I don't know. Oh, it's right here. Honestly, phenomenal book. A good friend of mine gave this to me for my birthday last year, and oh my goodness, did I love this book! It's just the story of a Vatican astronomer. I think he's still alive. Anyway, it's really cool because he went to Antarctica. He did a lot of stuff with meteorology and stuff, and it was just really cool to see the musings of a Catholic scientist, and you know, it's really inspiring. And it honestly had the best explanation of the Galileo controversy that I've ever read. Um, so I would highly suggest this book, Brother Astronomer. I really loved it. Um, Fires of Heaven. So you'll notice a number for these next like 10 books. A number of them are from the Wheel of Time series. So I started reading them last year. I had never read them. Super long series. It gets a bit weird at times. Um, I stopped reading it. I'll probably finish the series at some point, but there's just so many books, and they get repetitive and very similar. I really enjoyed the first couple, but at some point, just all of the characters started being not enjoyable, not fun. All the girl characters were all focused on the guys and manipulating everything. All the guys were either bumbling idiots or going crazy or whatnot. There's a lot of fun things in it to read, and it's definitely cool to see the magic system. But like I said, they're all 900 to 1,000 page books, and it's very repetitive. Honestly, it's like 3 books in a row all felt like exactly the same book. So that's Fires of Heaven, Lord of Chaos, Crown of Swords, and there's going to be a couple more after this. Searching for and Maintaining Peace. My sister got this for me for Christmas, or my birthday, Christmas last year. She just I don't know how she found it, but it's Father Jacques Philippe, and it just talks about the concept of what peace is and why we should search for it, and how God speaks to you through peace. If you don't have peace in a matter, then it is very likely that something's wrong with it. Um, and there's lots of nuance and things to talk about, but it was honestly just eye opening, and it's like, you know, it's really nice, this book, and to understand peace, because if you're in sin or if you're troubled about something and you're like, I don't know what to do with it, like, read this book. It can tell you a lot about what peace is and how to find it and how to know when it's false and how to know when it's true. So I enjoyed this book. It was a very quick read because it's a very short book. Uh, Path of Daggers, another Wheel of Time book. Okay, Tau Zero. This is a cool book. Uh, it's basically it's an old science fiction book where it talks about general relativity, time dilation, space contraction, all of those things, and there's just this ship that is constantly accelerating and thus time dilating, so that the outside universe moves quicker and quicker relative to them, and they end up seeing the death and the birth of universe. And it was just really cool how they went about that. Now, of course, it was a 1970s science fiction book, so there were a couple of scenes where it's just like, why are you talking about this? Just get back to the science and the cool aspects of it. But there was also the aspects of the interpersonal relations of the different people who are working to hear and to try to figure out what to do and how to survive in this crazy scenario. But so Tau Zero, um, Tau is in general relativity. It's basically like your time factor, your time dilation factor. So tau zero basically means they're approaching infinite time. Uh, the Man Who Loved Only Numbers. This is Paul Erdős. This is a math book, and it's just a story of Paul Erdős, who was just a phenomenal mathematician. He wrote so many books. In fact, in mathematics, there's something called the Erdős number, which is how many books you have how many not books, how many papers you have published with Paul Erdős, or how many steps you are removed from a publication with Paul Erdős. Like, oh, I published something with this person who published something with this person who's published something with Paul Erdős, and that's my Erdős number is 3. And it's kind of cool. He's a really cool guy. Is really inspiring. He loved kids, and he loved just sharing mathematical truths and mathematical fun. Um, he was also addicted to drugs, but he did not want kids to follow him in that, but to follow him in the math side of things. A Clockwork Orange. I just randomly found this in a suggested thing, and I was like, I feel like I've heard this before. It's a really interesting book because its focus in terms of style is in reading in language and how language is affected. So it's a fiction book, and it's like a dystopian future. Everything is chaos. It's like gangs roam around and whatnot. And the thing about this book is that it's said in the lingo of the time. And throughout the course of the book, you're like, I have no idea. Like, this almost feels like a different language. But throughout the course of the book, you actually get yourself acquainted with what language is like, and it's a cool experiment with how language works and how it builds together. But again, science fiction dystopian book from mid 19th century. There's a lot of references to um, immoral acts and this and that. I mean, it makes it clear about that. But yeah, it was a cool thing to read. Uh, so to cling with all her heart to him. Do I have that book? I don't know. I think I own it, but I don't know where it is. Anyway, to cling with all her heart to him. I honestly don't remember this book. I've read a number of like spiritual books, um, so I can't really say much on this matter. But I mean, obviously, Saint Clare of Assisi is a really cool person, and I read this during adoration times and whatnot, and it helped me. I just don't remember any particulars. Story of a Soul, an autobiography of Saint Therese of Lisieux. So the Saint Therese of Lisieux lived 19th, 18th century, um, and she was just a really holy woman. And I own this book. It's right here. Um, and she's a really holy woman, and The Little Flower, tons of people love her. Highly recommend. If you're looking for a spiritual book, Story of a Soul is probably the number one to get and read. There's just so much contained in this about how to love God, and it's really amazing. Uh, Another Wheel of Time book. Another Wheel of Time book. Yeah, I was really in a phase. The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. Um, so this is the second book from Brandon Sanderson's Year of Sanderson. My brother, got all the books at the largest. Oh shit, what's the thing called? Kickstarter. The largest Kickstarter in history was the Year of Sanderson. And my brother, paid for the books, and this was a very interesting book. It's not set in his famous Cosmere. There's going to be a couple Cosmere books later that I'll mention. It's not set in his Cosmere, but it's just a fun little book. It's probably not something I would read again, but it was some cool aspects. Talking about a frugal wizard's handbook for surviving medieval England is that's fun. But this does make me think because okay, so there was a book that I forgot. I think I read it probably January or February, which is why it's not there. It's Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is the first of these books. It's in the famous Cosmere. I'd love to talk about the Cosmere. There's a lot in there. But Tress of the Emerald Sea, phenomenal book. Probably one of the best standalone books that I mean, it's in the universe, but it's effectively a standalone. It's one of the best that Brandon Sanderson has made, in my opinion. There's just so many cool aspects of the magic system and how things interact, and it was just really fun. I really loved that book, and I wish I had put it on. That's one of the things I read in January that I forgot about. Treason. This is Orson Scott Card. Orson Scott Card is my favorite science fiction writer by far. I've got a number of books by him. Treason, I own. I just I was at a bookstore once and picked up like 4 or 5 Orson Scott Card books. I had never read Treason before. It's it's an interesting book. So it's set on a world, and the world is split up into like different kingdoms or domains where different cultures have dominance, and the different cultures have a specific thing that they're really good at. Whether or not it's genetic manipulation and understanding of time or this or that. Um, and then the main character just kind of goes through all of these and masters them all. There's a couple of weird scenes at the beginning, but after that, it's just like, yeah, it was a good science fiction book. It was basically more of a fantasy thing, but it's science fiction technically. You Mean the Nightmare Painter, another Brandon Sanderson secret project. Um, Again, great book. This is just like it talks about beauty and art and the creative avenue, but also courage and stubbornness and love. And Brandon Sanderson wrote this for his wife, um, and we all get to share in that joy. This is in the Cosmere, and I'm excited to see how it interplays with the different magic systems that is there. Regarding ducks and universes, so this is me on a science hit. I just randomly saw this as a suggested on my story graph, and I'm like, you know what? Why not? That sounds fun. And it's just this cool thing where it's just like, okay, so parallel universes, let's say they exist, and let's say that a scientist at one point in time was able to connect them and transfer information between them, and eventually be able to transfer people between them, such that these parallel universes split at one specific moment, and then over the course of the next 30, 40 years, they deviated quite significantly. And it talks about like the different ways that the deviation happens. And the whole point of this book is just like, let's find the original cause of this. And there's talk about it might have been a duck. A duck splashing in the water caused the split of universes. It's just a fun little book. I really enjoyed it. It's nice and short. Um, to Sleep in a Sea of Stars. So Christopher Paolini is a fantasy writer from my childhood, basically. The Aragon series, so good. I loved it. Last couple books were a little weird, but still good. This is Christopher Paolini's excursion into science fiction. It's a really interesting one, talking about aliens exist and the ways this interplay happens. The main character becomes infested with basically an alien thing that makes her incredibly powerful. um, and it just goes through all of that to talk about it. So yeah, I don't really know much more to say about that. It's a good book to read. I enjoyed it. Um, it Christopher Paolini could use a bit of work in science fiction writing, but he definitely has some good concepts. It seemed very generic at times. Fractal Noise is another one in his universe there. It's a prequel thing, and this was actually just such a unique book. Like, I've never read a book like this. It was like an adventure-based book where they're trying to understand the basically, this is the first experience they have with aliens. They went to an alien. They went to a planet far away from Earth, and they found a massive hole, perfectly circular, incredibly deep. There's no way that like the it could have formed naturally, and it was giving off massive bursts of energy. And then this is an expedition that went down to it and tried to figure this out. But these massive bursts of energy made it really difficult. And then there's a lot of interpersonal relations that just make things difficult. There's lots of interfighting and all of that. So it's rough. But it's such a unique book. I really liked it. An Introduction to Philosophy. This is a book I got like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And I started reading it a year and a half ago. And I finished it in August. So yeah, I mean it's a good philosophy book, but it's just so dense in that it doesn't really like hold the attention because it's just talking about philosophy and some history of it. It was cool. I enjoyed reading it, um, but it just took me forever. And this is the reason why I didn't read any books in May, because I was like, I gotta finish this book, and then I only read this book when I was eating, and thus it took forever. And then I stopped, and then I'm like in August, I'm like, finish it, and so I did. Um, Then this is when I moved into my apartment and I got a new library card. And I stopped by the St. Louis Public Library. And I just randomly saw a book by Mercedes Lackey. I loved a lot of Mercedes Lackey books when I was younger. I had never heard about the Griffin series. There's probably 100 books in this series. So I just found a random one, and I was like, "Wait, oh, this is a new series." So I looked it up, and I went to the first one. So this is the Black Griffin. It's cool. It's a classic Mercedes Lackey book. I think an old style, old as in pre 2000s roughly, but the whole series rages over years. It was a cool book. Um, Griffins being able to talk and communicate, and the magic system involved therein. Um, yeah, there was also a lot of talk about like pride or ways of growing and being more accepting of different avenues of going about things. These griffins big and strong, but then there's a new griffin that was weak and but really fast and really smart, and there's a lot of interplay there. And so that's the next three books that I read in that series. This first one is just like, oh, there's a war going on, and then something happens at the end. And then this one is oh shoot, I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, so this one is they go off and make their own new town, their own new city, and then they discover some foreigners, and is the interplay of how to interact with these foreign people with a completely different culture. And then this silver griffin was stranded in a forest, trying to make her way back, being hunted by deadly beasts. Um, Not the best one of the trilogy, but it was a cool endeavor, and I will probably come back to this series because there's a ton more books. There's a ton of like trilogies in this that I'll probably come back to eventually. Um, Orson Scott Card, another book, First Meetings. This. I got it at the same time as. No, wait, I didn't. I got this at the library. I saw it on the bookshelf. I'm like, I don't think I've read this. It's just 3 or 4 short stories from the Enderverse, my favorite science fiction universe, and yeah, so I read it. It's cool. Something about Orson Scott Card, his style with writing his main characters is they are utterly intelligent. They talk high, lofty terms. They figure out so much stuff, and it's kind of fun to read. And it's just like this is almost a little over the top, but it's enjoyable. It was enjoyable. Um, one of the short stories was basically like super intelligent man meets super intelligent woman, a like super intelligent man who never met anyone smarter than him meets a woman and he's like, wow, she's smarter than me. And then it's just like the short story is just a discussion between them where they like talk about everything and they predict half of the things in that happens in the Ender's books. It was weird. Pathfinder, Orson Scott Card book. I found this at the library. I was like, whoa, I don't think I've read this book. I love Orson Scott Card. And then I started reading it. I'm like, oh, I read this. I could have read it in high school, in college. I don't remember when. But this is a cool one. It's a magic system where there's time. Some characters have some aspect of control over time. Like to see. It's called Pathfinder because the main character can see the paths of people. Basically, if someone walks, they leave behind like this little shiny trail. And the Pathfinder series is actually really cool. Um, it gets into a lot of questions, um, such as the rule of the society. Uh, the main character is incredibly intelligent. It's an Orson Scott Card style, and just there's a lot of fun interplays there, and I enjoyed it. Uh, I The second one's a little further down the line. Sunlit Man. This is the fourth Brandon Sanderson secret project from this year, and this was an homage to the fans of the Cosmere. It connected so many different books. It talked about so many different things, and throughout the whole time of reading this book, you're like, wait, who is this? Wait, I know that person was in this thing, and all of these things, and it introduced more stuff as to what investiture and the magic style is in his whole Cosmere, um, and it's starting to mark the shift from Brandon Sanderson writing books in individual worlds in his universe with small connections to the other worlds in the universe to big connections between the universe and culminating in whatever it's going to be. And it was really cool. Um, War of Gifts, another Ender Saga thing in the universe. Um, I don't remember this. This might have been like Oh no, never mind. But again, Ender's Verse, my favorite science fiction series. So anything by Orson Scott Card, pretty good. Ruins. This is the Pathfinder series that we had read there. So I'm gonna refer to that for my review of it. Artemis by Andy Weir. Oh shoot, what was Artemis? I read this like last month. So Andy Weir is who wrote The Martian. There's a big movie about it, and I've read a couple of his other books, and they're pretty good. They're pretty good science fiction books, exploring interesting things. Okay, I need to know what. Give me one thing that talks about it. Oh, okay. This was a weird book. It was on the moon. Um, the main character is this young adult female who is a smuggler, and there's a lot of stuff that happens on the one city on the moon, um, and she's involved in some of those things, and some drastic things go wrong, but she's powers through and saves everything, and everything works out well. It was kind of a really strange book. It was enjoyable to read, especially like talking about how some of the things work on the moon and how a moon colony would live. Um, but it just kind of felt tacked together at the end. 7 Days That Divide the World. I went to the Newman Center at WashU to the library and was like, hey, I just want to find a book to read. And I found this one, and it's interplay between science and religion. And so this is talking about the 7 days of Genesis and all sorts of different ways that people have interpreted it, and talking about young Earth creationism, evolution, this and that, on all of these things, and giving just really unbiased overview of it. Um, and just basically saying this also talked about the Galileo controversy. And it was fairly good, not quite as good as Brother Astronomer was at talking about that, but it was fun to read. I enjoyed going over this, and the interplay of science and religion is a really important thing to me. So, if you're interested in reading stuff about you know Genesis, and it's like, wait, am I young Earth creationist? No, Catholics aren't young Earth creationists. I mean, there are some that are, but that the Bible does not tell us to believe that the earth was created 6,000 years ago. That is just not what it is. And this book really delves into, you have to understand the context of the Bible, the way it is written. Is it written as a scientific endeavor? No, it's written to explore truths of the faith, not necessarily truths of how the world works. It is not a science book. The mathematical experience. I picked this up at a book sale at the library like 2 years ago, probably. It's just this long book. Um, but I started reading it this semester. It took me weeks to do because I started it, and then probably in August, and then other books came up and I read those instead, and just slowly made my way through it. This was a good book talking about different mathematical theories. It explains a lot of things. It was very approachable math, but it's just talking about there. Uh, at the end, it talked a lot about like mathematical reality, how different mathematicians viewed like is math created or invented, or discovered? Is math? Do you have to be able to construct things with math? Do you have to be able to understand things with math? Does math all, and just all sorts of interesting concepts. So this it was a really interesting book. If you're really into math, I highly suggest it. If you want me to borrow it from me, let me know. A Woman in the Trees. Um, where is it? I know I own it. I got this at a 10 books book sale. It's $5. It was a great thing. It's basically a kid's book, or at least great book to read to your kids. It talks about, it's a fiction book based on the first proved Marian apparition in the United States, in America. It's a fiction book in that it follows a semi-fictional character, and the story therein is fictional. But anytime they talk about the person who experienced the Marian apparition, everything about that is historical, more or less. There's some, of course, it's a book, so there have to be some things like they don't know exactly how a barn was looking like, and so that's fictional. But things about the Marian, the one who saw the Marian apparition, that's historical, and the different characters in the book are based on historical figures, and so this honestly, it's a really cool book. Kids would love it, and It just talks about miracles, and I enjoyed reading that. Uh, Plan of Life. This is one. Oh yeah, over the summer in a prayer group, a friend's dad gave this to me, and I started reading it at the beginning of the semester, and then the books came in, and it was just 20 pages in. And then at some point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave this in my office at school. And anytime I eat lunch there, this is the only book that I read there. And I finished it. It talks a lot about, a plan for life, different things that you can do to really set yourself on your day, different tricks and techniques to use to help you go closer to God, help you become who you want to be, help you to be disciplined and righteous and all of that. And so if you struggle with discipline and stuff, this is a good book for that. Again, if you want it, let me know. Uh, 40 Dreams of St. John Bosco. Oh boy, this is a good book. Oh, I don't have it because it's on my kitchen table because I just finished it up like yesterday. Um, literally yesterday. So good. So St. John Bosco lived in the 18th century, and he just had lots of dreams, lots of dreams that told him lots of things about the people, and it really talks a lot about different temptations, things that pull you away from God, the dangers of sin, the dangers of pride, of not listening to your superiors, etc. But also about the power and conversion of confession and the joy of Our Lady. Phenomenal. The last dream there, I made a short video about it a couple days ago, just because like he like got a dream that predicted basically Vatican I and how it ended, Vatican II, the death of Pope John Paul I, and the immediate secession by Pope John, now Saint Pope John Paul II. It's a good book. I highly recommend this. I really enjoyed reading that. Now, as you can see, that's the last book. There's other books that I am in the course of reading. Let's see. My currently reading pile. Currently reading Frankenstein. I got a new Kindle last week, and this was like the first book that popped up. I'm like, yeah, let's read it. I'm actually really enjoying it. It's a good book. I'll probably finish it in a couple days. My Imitation of Christ, I got this with another big bulk book purchase. I started reading it, and then other things have come up. So I want to finish this at some point, but I want to actually read it. You Are the Saints. This is a daily meditation, so you just read a short page each day. Um, it's enjoyable to just start off the day on a meditation. I enjoy that. Secret of the Rosary. That's right here. Uh, I started this months ago, and it just the Rosary is such a cool thing. St. Louis de Montfort writes really well about it, and the Rosary is amazing. I just haven't yet finished the actual content of it, but at the end of the book, there's methods of praying the Rosary, some additional things that you can do to really meditate on the mysteries, and that has helped me a lot. So while I haven't finished this book, I've spent many hours praying with it. Um, Knife of Dreams. This is Wheel of Time book. I put it on my to read list, and then I started reading other books, and I'll eventually get to reading it. It says I'm currently reading just because I got it, and then I read other books, and it got deleted from my Kindle. Um, but as you can see, this last year, I started off in a fantasy world, reading a bunch of fantasy books. I mean, with a couple of faith books here or there, um, faith or science books here or there, but primarily fantasy, a bit of science fiction. But then slowly bringing in some mathematical books that I have. I have a ton more down there that I still need to read. And then some faith books. But then this semester, since August, I've just really been wanting to read more books to improve who I am, to understand more about my faith and my life. Um, so that's what I've been doing a lot of. That's why the last couple books, honestly, these Griffin series after this, I was like, you know what? Let's read some other books. I mean, Pathfinder, I found that, but like, it's after this where it's just okay. Then religion, science, religion, life. religion. Um, and there's a couple of other books, a ton of books over there that I still need to read, and I just really enjoy reading. So hopefully next year, instead of 34 books, I'll be reading like 50, because there's definitely were periods of time, weeks, where I barely read anything. Stupid YouTube and pulling you away from reading books, or the prideful thing of like, I've read all the interesting books. I have not read all the interesting books. Even fantasy books, there's so many more that I could read. Even science fiction books, there's so many more that I can read. But like, I I want to read I want to read a wide variety. I want to be well versed in many different avenues of reading. So, um, I know this is a long video. No one will have gotten to this point. But if you really like books, please go through them. I talk about a lot of books. It's really fun. I own a lot of books. I bought like 30 books this year. There's a ton on my bookshelves. I love books. If you want to give me a book, I'd love to take it. If you want a book from me, I'd love to give you a book. Um, but anyway, this has been a Catholic physicist talking about his books. So have a great day.